I believe at any time you can make that cup of coffee, go for that walk. In fact, that's probably what you need to refire your day.
By getting some things done quite early in the morning, when people are asleep, I feel set up for the day, and then I go do the kid thing, and then I walk the dog.
I think your spouse is extremely important in that work-life balance equation because having a very supportive wife, she understands that in order to support our family, I need to close deals.
So I try to take deep breaths, do about 30 minutes of morning meditation before I start my day. And it kind of just clears your mind and gets you ready for the remainder of the day. And then after that, some lemon water.
Welcome to the Coffee Break with Jake call. We do this call every Friday at 11 a.m. And the purpose of the call is to share challenges, opportunities, best practices. Really, selfishly, I host this call to learn from all of you because I found that all the best things I know, I've learned from other people. And so really glad to have you guys on the call today. This is a pretty exciting topic for me because as a small business owner, I find myself oftentimes stressed, oftentimes less productive than I might want to be. And I think that unfortunately, those things conflict, right? You want to be more productive. You feel more stressed. You're less productive. But I think there's some really great strategies for overcoming that. What I'd love to do, first of all, is if anybody is on this call and they are never stressed, would you just raise your hand for me? That's the hand raise button. If you're never stressed, hit that button for me. So I got to see if we've got anybody on the call that's never stressed. All right. I was really hoping we could have that person kind of give us the secret sauce right here. Sounds like we've got a group full of people that are living with stress. But that's good news because I imagine that if you are living with stress, you've probably done some work on trying to relieve that stress, trying to get some balance, looking up, different books and resources. And so, first of all, if there's anybody on the call that has recently read or listened to a life-changing book or podcast on the topic of stress and managing stress and increasing productivity, would you just raise your hand for me? That's the hand raise button. I know there's some folks, as I was talking about the this topic, had brought up some specific books, Atomic Habits. I think there's some other ones out there, but is there anybody on here that's read something recently that's helped them with this? We're going to go to morning routines then, guys. Is there anybody on here? We know we talked to Elizabeth a little bit about her routine of grinding the beans and making the coffee in the morning. Is there anybody on here that's worked on improving their morning routine recently, and that's had a positive impact on managing their stress and increasing their productivity? Good, Clint. Thank you, Clint. I'm worried, guys. I'm worried. We have 29 folks on the call, and only Clint has a morning routine. Clint, talk to us a little bit about your morning routine.
Certainly. So it's not a new routine. I've done it for many years now, but I like to start my morning off by reading for at least 30 minutes. And it doesn't matter what book. Sometimes they're business books, self-help books. Sometimes they're just a novel. I just cycle through, I find a book I want to read, and that just becomes my morning ritual. I get ready. And I just sit down and I read. It gets the brain moving, firing the cylinders. And then after about 30 minutes, I'll put the book aside and then dive into work.
I think that sounds like such a good habit. I have the unhealthy habit of waking up in a panic, realizing I've forgotten something and checking my phone to go send a message. So I think, ultimately, a much nicer way to start the day would be to kind of wait to get into some of that stuff. And I wonder, Clint, do you intentionally kind of wait to get into emails that might have come in the night before, things like that?
Yeah,
or do
yeah.
you check any of that stuff first?
No, everyone on my team, everyone that's close to me that knows, if there's a problem and it needs my attention now, it's a phone call. Don't email me, don't text me, call me, and it'll grab my attention. I'll deal with it. Anything else can wait until 8 o'clock, right? I mean, I usually grab my book about 7:30. I'll read 7:30, 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, I'll start diving into emails and seeing what's going on. So if it's important, people have called me and it grabs my attention. Otherwise, it can wait for a half hour while I read and get the cylinders firing.
I really like that. I think that's and one of the things I like about that is setting the expectation with your team. This was something uh, I have a similar kind of experience with appropriately communicating urgency. I do not like I don't like an urgent thing coming through in an email because I might miss it. Right.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate, and I don't know if anybody can relate to this. I hate complicated text message conversations. My rule is that if I can't answer it with like a yes or a no, please don't text me with it because what I don't want to do is like sit there having a texting conversation, pick me up, pick up the call. If it's complicated and not urgent, send me an email. If it's urgent and complicated, or if it's just urgent, call me, right? So, really interesting note on that, Clint, on kind of setting that expectation with the team, and I think that's important. As we try to maintain balance in our lives, kind of setting some guardrails, right? Saying, "Hey, this is how I need to kind of work with you." That really does help to create that level of balance. And we have Kendra on. Kendra, thanks for calling in or signing on or whatever it is. I guess we're on a Teams. Glad to have you with us, Kendra, calling in from Vector. Kendra, tell us a little bit about your morning routine.
It's not really a routine per se. I try to do it every morning. There are some mornings where I do have, like you have, where I remember something from the night before, the day before, and I'm like writing it down real quick before I forget. But I try to wake up, stretch, and then do morning meditation. So I try to take deep breaths, do about 30 minutes of morning meditation before I start my day. And it kind of just clears your mind and gets you ready for the remainder of the day. And then after that, some lemon water.
There you go. Yeah. Remember to hydrate, everybody. I feel like that's always whenever I'm feeling really crappy, my wife's like, "Hey, did you drink any water today?" And I'm like, "I had some coffee." And she says it doesn't count, but I've looked it up and the water in coffee does count. It may not be as good as just drinking some old-fashioned water, but I prefer some caffeinated bean water if I have a choice. So, thank you for sharing that, Kendra. And you know, uh that morning meditation, I find that for me, I have young kids, so like I've very rarely found myself in a situation where like I have quiet time first thing in the morning. Usually there's like a screaming child on the other side of the house that I'm going to get. We'll work on that. We'll work on that. But I try to start my day with an expression of gratitude and prayer. And so like when I wake up, I thank God for the day, for my family, and I ask him to return us home safely to each other at night. And it's a very quick thing, but it's just the way that I start my day. And I say that it takes me a few seconds. I think that it's one of those things that when you start the day with the right mindset, even if you're not spending a lot of time with it can really help you kind of change your whole day, and help you approach that screaming toddler with the right mindset, um, even though you're tired and it's early in the morning. So, Elizabeth Parks, thanks so much for jumping on. Tell us a little bit about your morning routine.
Yes, so thanks, Jake. Like you, I have children, although they're no longer screaming children. I have a 15-year-old, 14-year-old, and 11-year-old. And so my mornings are completely dictated by these children, teenagers who are quite moody. And so I have to be very intentional, I think, these days with my routine and the juggle because you just don't know what's going to happen, that morning. So I get up early. I like to work early. I probably put in about 45 minutes of work before anybody in the house is awake, and that actually really helps me set up my day because I have a lot to accomplish, and also, I'm in the position where I have to be accessible and available to our team, and so by getting some things done quite early in the morning, when people are asleep, I feel set up for the day, and then I go do the kid thing, and then I walk the dog. So my newest thing has been I have 2 dogs, and I'll take each of them separately because of a situation where they can't be together, and do, like, just even a 10-minute walk around the block, and so that's really been great for me. We've been out of an office for about 2 months because we moved offices, and then we just moved into our new office last week, and so now I've got the office back, which I'm very excited about, and so that routine now will translate of doing all that and then getting into the office, um, kinda early. I have to get my kids to school by 7:30, and so I could be at the office as early as 7:45, and so that does mean sometimes it's like 5 a.m. wake up, but for me right now, that actually early wake up really helps me, because sometimes the day can get away, and if I get to the end of the day and I haven't gotten things done that I felt were a priority to do, then I don't feel good about the day, and so that early morning really helps me, set myself up for success.
No, that's awesome, and I think that, you highlight a really good point is that um, if you don't kinda manage uh if you don't manage the day to day in such a way that you get done what you really need to get done, it just adds to the stress, and all that stress makes it really harder. I found, the more stressed I am, honestly, the less productive I am. I really got to have my head on right, try to get focused, try to get my list of priorities together, and try to get that accomplished. I am I like to finish my day at night, and I schedule emails. So like my team probably thinks that I don't they've probably figured it out by now, and certainly now Tyler knows my secret. I schedule my emails for the morning, so, like, I'll be up late kinda reviewing whatever it was that came through that I missed throughout the day that wasn't super urgent, and I'll try to send an email, I'll schedule it for the following morning. Sometimes I miss it. Tyler, if you ever get an email from me at, like, 1 o'clock in the morning, I don't want it was an accident. I meant to just hit schedule email, and I hit send, but that certainly helped me. Elizabeth, you mentioned, earlier before we got started, your routine of kind of grinding coffee, making coffee. Is there anything else like kind of like a like a self care kind of routine, something that kind of helps you? You mentioned walking the dog. Was there anything else that you might do in the morning or at night to help you kind of prepare for the day or end the day in a good
Yeah,
way?
I'm definitely a person who prays frequently throughout the day, and so I do start my morning and evenings with sort of thoughtful prayers for myself and our family, but also that coffee once the kids get to school. Um, if I'm going back home, then I sit outside and drink my coffee, and I really like being outside. So I think just fresh air and just just not being indoors is something that I really appreciate as well as part of my routine, I would say. So, and it is tied to that great cup of coffee that I make as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I have a buddy. He does the whole French press, grind the beans. I think he probably roasts the beans. I don't know if he's planted the beans out back, but this guy's so into it. But what I've realized is that for him, it's the ritual of it that is really important to him and kind of helps him kind of get in the right mindset, and it's a self-care thing. I will also I do want to point out that as the weather gets nice all over the country right now, taking that time to go outside. I love one of the best parts of my job is that most of the time I can kind of do what I need to do from wherever. And I like to be able to do that from sitting outside the house or sitting outside. Now that it's getting really nice, I have to admit I might sneak off. Don't tell anybody, Tyler, but I might sneak off to the beach or to the boat for a few hours here over the next few weeks. But anyways, thanks so much for sharing, Elizabeth. And we've got Stevie G. How do you start the day?
Um, I start the day by taking 10 minutes at the end of the day to set up for the day coming up. So at least I have all of those thoughts in my mind of what's got to be done. And by starting the day, I don't do caffeine because I found that I'm not a good person when I have caffeine.
Oh, see, that's the
So,
difference. I'm a bad person when I don't have caffeine. I'm a terrible person.
yeah. Um, So, some of us have the luxury, as you indicated, we can work from home occasionally, or work from other places. And I have found, and also my staff does it. The most important thing is get up, get showered, get dressed, have your breakfast, like making like it's a real work, like you were going into the office, that you're not just slumming down into your pajamas and you're ready to work. I think that for me, I never did that to begin with, but I find that the mindset is completely different when you start your day that way. I start with breakfast. I don't have the luxury like Clint does to read books. My mind just 30 minutes. I get in about 3 sentences in, I'm thinking of other things, but I will look at the paper and try to get a grasp on what's going on in the day. And that's it. Then after that, I start the day. Uh, I didn't think we were having our conference call today because it was Good Friday. So I am not wearing a pajama top. This is actually a shirt. So usually I'd be all dressed in a business shirt, but be that as it may, I think that sets the tone and it sets the day. Because I've spoken to other people who work remotely, and they're like, "Oh, I came down, I started working. Now it's 10:30 or 10:45. I'm gonna run and take a 15-minute shower." That just does not work.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think a lot of people, over the past few years with folks, maybe becoming more open to work from home. I guess maybe less open to it now. But there's certainly some adjustment involved in that, right? For me, I will tell you that I'm right there with you. Getting up, getting ready, I feel better. I feel ready to kind of rock. I am not a productive person before I've, you know, taken a shower, combed my hair, brushed my, I gotta be ready to go. So I hear you on that. I would also point out that I think sometimes, for me, Stevie, I don't read in the morning. I'd like to actually, but sometimes I'll write or I'll start drafting like a LinkedIn post. I post a lot on LinkedIn, and I have to admit that I think a lot of it is cathartic for me. It's actually helpful to kind of sit down and reflect on things, think about what's happened over the past few weeks or even over the past few years, and so. For some folks, reading is helpful. For other folks, maybe spending a little bit of time writing is helpful. But I think that there's something to be said for quiet time, right? Like there is so much activity and so much noise in our day. Just having some quiet time, I think, is really helpful. Hey, Will, glad to have you on. Tell us about your morning, man. How do you start the day?
Well,
Before you go out there and land those big projects, my man.
well, what is a morning routine when you have a toddler and then you have another baby on the way in 5 weeks? So whatever I did have going up until this point, I'm probably going to have to readjust here in the near future.
Well, first of all, congratulations. I do want to point this out though. I think that there is a toxic level of perfection, kind of like people really promote this, have the perfect morning, 5 a.m. routine, run 5 miles, eat your greens, get everything like all this stuff. And like to your point, Will, depending on like life circumstances, especially when you have kids, sometimes that doesn't totally work. And honestly, like, not to say that there isn't a benefit in striving for these things, but sometimes I just think people need to dial it down. Like, I don't need to drink a cup of seawater in the morning in order to have a successful day. Maybe some people do, but anyway, sorry, I went off on a tangent. Continue on with the morning
Which my morning started with a cold plunge in the morning, but most mornings I'm just thankful if I can leave the house with a bag of my daughter's fruit snacks for a snack.
Yeah.
But in an ideal world, typically what I do like doing for the mornings and to prepare for the mornings is the evening before. I'm a night owl. I have a hard time going to sleep before midnight. I just struggle. But a lot of times I'll go ahead and it might be a bad thing to do this before bed, but sometimes I'll just go ahead and open my email. That way I have an idea of what I will need to face or encounter in the following morning. But outside of that ideal morning for me, for Christmas, I splurged on a really nice espresso machine. So I would like to get up, make a nice coffee. My commute to work is about 50 minutes. So during that commute, I would like to either listen to a podcast in my daily devotional. And then I also have a gratitude book that a guy that I go to church with, he created. So I like to write down a few things in the morning that I'm extremely grateful for. So that's an ideal morning for me.
That's awesome, man. That sounds perfect. I actually, my wife and I, for a few years, we lived out at the beach, and in order to live out by the beach, we had to drive. Like it was a commute. Like, I mean, I say commute, but it was probably about 50 minutes, 55 minutes, just under an hour, to get home every day. And I have to say, like, that was actually a really nice. It's hard with young, when we had our first daughter, it was very hard kind of commuting with a young child, um, but having time in the car, I actually really enjoy when I'm traveling and I have a long drive. I'm not big on flying. I tolerate it. I have to do it, right? But the drive time I really enjoy. So I'm with you on that, taking that time to listen to audiobooks. But back to living by the beach, I would go. It was like a long drive. I could listen to an audiobook, and then I went over this big bridge onto the island because it was like a barrier island, and I remember like every day it just felt like I was leaving the day behind. Now I live in the suburbs of Orlando, so I take my stress home with me. But but it was nice for a time. If anybody gets the opportunity to live out by the beach, I tell you, it was a really nice season. So thanks so much for sharing that, Will. Jason, world traveler, talking about Jason. Jason, first of all, where are you at in the world? And tell us about how you start your day.
So I'm at home in Scotland for now. I spent 3 weeks out in the States. Got back 2 weeks ago. Was back for a day and a half, then went down to Birmingham for the security event. So I was home for around 30 hours and then went away for 5 days again. And I've spent the last week at home. And our next trip coming up will be out to Australia in 2.5 weeks' time.
So tell us about how you manage, kind of how you start your day, especially in different time zones. And do you have some kind of routine or something that helps you kind of stay on track even with the jet lag?
So no, like I'm going completely the other way. I am an advocate for not letting how you start your day determine your day.
Ah.
And I don't verbalize, like I verbalize it to my kids every day and to my wife maybe, but I don't go out there preaching it, so to speak. But I don't buy into, if I miss my routine in the morning, well, my day is just not going to be the same as yesterday or as good because I missed it. I believe at any time you can make that cup of coffee, go for that walk. In fact, that's probably what you need to refire your day, if it's not going well. And because of the way that I work and travel, a typical day for me will be sort of 7 to 8 a.m. Customers in South Africa will come online, 9 a.m. in the UK, 2 in the afternoon, East Coast US, 3 in the afternoon, South Africa starts winding down, 5 in the afternoon, the West Coast picks up and the UK shuts down, 9 at night, New Zealand opens up, 10 at night, the East Coast shuts down. 11 at night, Australia opens up, 1 in the morning, West Coast shuts down.
When
So
does Jason ever shut down? Does Jason ever shut down or no?
between like 1:30 a.m. and 7 a.m., that's like my
Okay.
night time,
Okay.
and for me, because it's not like a solid 18 hours, like, back to back.
Yeah.
It's like a hour 45, or half an hour, 45 minutes, every half an hour, 45 minutes, so it's ongoing and progresses throughout the day. And I just, with what I do in my workload, I just can't. I listen to a lot of stuff. I don't read enough at all. I don't read at all. In fact, when I do read, it's really small articles or pieces. I tend to listen to a lot more and talk to people about it. Um, and everybody sort of advocates and says, like, get into this routine, the 4 a.m. club, get up, get your day started, get ahead of everyone else and do whatever. Like, and I believe that structure and that system can give you some sort of motivation, give you something, right? Like, I've got my day started right. I'm going to knock it out the park. At the same time, I just have to tell all people that follow that sort of routine, it's good for you, but it's not bad if you miss it. There are other times in the day when you can refire it and turn your day around.
I think that's such an important point, right? Because we live in a dynamic, world, right? Things are changing, circumstances are changing. We have situations that come up, especially, especially for those of us that do have kids at home, there's always different things that we're doing. But even if you're not, if you're traveling, if your schedule changes, if from time to time you have a family emergency or a work emergency or whatever it is, it's such a good observation, Jason, that, we have to take time to reset, um, throughout the day, right? Like it really can be, and I find this, I can find myself in a kind of a mental slump, so to speak, and I realize at that time I need to go get out of the office, go get coffee. What's weird, my dad actually lives he lives like 20 minutes from my office. And sometimes like he must pick up on a vibe because he'll text me and be like, "Hey, you want a cup of coffee or something?" And so I just know for me that the coffee it's not even just about the caffeine. It's about just kind of taking that break, right? And it is also about the caffeine. I'm addicted. I've serious problem with it. It's too much. Probably what makes me jittery and contributes to some of the anxiety, but you know what? I need it, so I'm gonna stick with it. But thank you for that, Jason. For those of you that are in ever find yourself in a slump, and AJ, I don't know if AJ, if you're able to come on, because I did want to talk to you about this and kind of discuss it a little bit with you. Jason was talking about recently about work-life balance and burnout. And I think for Jay, and I won't steal your thunder on this, AJ, but I think part of it is that you're an ambitious person, you're married to an ambitious person, you're both go-getters, and you go get. Tell us a little bit about, kind of what we were discussing just recently about, kind of that work-life balance and some of the challenges that you might feel with burnout.
Thanks, Jake. And I think that's you said it best. Like, for what you said in that post is exactly kind of what I needed to hear. We had a fantastic fourth quarter. And then it seemed like Q1 started and it just kind of slumped off. Like, some of our big projects were coming through, but the little stuff that I count on was not. And for me, it feels like I'm not doing enough, right? And then once you get into that kind of cycle of, all right, I'm not doing enough, I got to push harder, and you're pushing harder, and there's no immediate results, and it kind of starts to send you in a tailspin, especially when you're a results driven person, right? You're working twice as hard and you're not seeing the results, and you're going like, what is going on? And then, some of this a little bit has to do with me personally. I'm going through some changes. My wife actually made me do it. I went and had my hormones checked, and they were all out of whack. And I've been working on that, and in that process, I've lost 45 pounds.
Wow.
And so I attribute it to quite, just a lot kind of going on at once.
Hey, so a couple of notes on this. I am a, uh, oh man, throughout my career, if sales dipped, I'm a points in the board guy. Like I'm not I look at, hey, and when I say points in the board, usually what I mean by that is, hey, like, what are sales at? How are we doing for the month? How are we doing for the quarter? How are we doing for the year? And for a very long time, anytime there was a dip in sales or a slowdown in sales, I went into like full panic mode, like irrational. Oh my gosh, why people aren't buying from us anymore? Less people are going to stop buying from us. Nobody's gonna buy from us. Like this crazy kind of like downward mental spiral. Um, and then inevitably, if it would be, things would pick back up. You did the right activity that produces the results, maybe not immediately, but over time as you refill your pipeline. But I can tell you, as a small business owner, AJ, I totally feel you on that, right? Like it can be uh I do want to point out, though, that even though you were feeling like that, from what I know about your business, for the sake of everybody else on the call, AJ's business was not in a downward spiral. AJ's business was not like, not successful by anybody's standards but his own, right? And I just think it's important. Somebody told me, and this stuck with me a while back. They said sometimes you have to timeline things, and what they meant by it was, would the you 5 years ago be happy with where you're at today? And so, and how would you feel about it where you're at today? And sometimes that might not be like the you 5 years ago might have been at your prime, and you're like, hey, like this is not where I want to be, but that gives you motivation to kind of work towards your goals. But I think for a lot of us, and AJ, probably yourself included, AJ, where was Matson Alarm of Tennessee 5 years ago as compared to today?
Oh man, a big. I mean, we had uh 10 recurring revenue customers, right? And today we've 300 times that. So and I think that for me, being new to the alarm side of business, right, I feel this overwhelming pressure to continue to add new reoccurring customers, right? Because at some point that attrition is going to start to kick in. For me, we're dealing with a little bit. When we started, we used DMP, and um I don't want to say anything bad, but like it doesn't really work for a lot of customers. And so we faced a little bit of attrition at the beginning of the year. Not a lot. I mean, we're talking 6, 7 customers. But when you get 3 in 1 week, it scares you.
Yeah, and just to point out, I want to point out, AJ, your target demographic is primarily uh, small business and residential, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, and so I wanna prep you for this. You're in this beautiful growth stage of your business. How many years have you been in business?
There, this
Here in
is
Tennessee.
this is year 5.
Okay, so AJ came from Matson Alarm on the West Coast, started out there in Tennessee. In 5 years, has built a successful business there. AJ, I predict that 5 years from now, you will have grown so substantially that it will be a case of your stress is going to change. It's going to change from adding RMR, simply just adding RMR, to realizing, hey, we've gotten so big that now we're trying to keep up with just natural attrition. It sounded like you kind of hinted towards that, anticipating that already. But when you get to a certain size in a recurring revenue business in a market, as you saturate that market, it becomes less easy to grow organically, because you're already so big. You already have kind of tapped into many or most of the prospects, and now you're trying to figure out how you expand it. And that's why we see companies that go from, traditional organic growth to maybe opening a new office. I know we've got Will here from Silent Guard, and they've grown through opening an additional office. They've grown through acquisition. And so, I'm excited to see where you've come, kind of how you've gotten here in 5 years, AJ. And I'm going to be really excited to kind of, watch as you overcome those new growth opportunities as a business matures. Anything you want to add about kind of balancing things out as with your work life? We'll call it integration instead of work life balance.
I mean, for me, I feel like I may be a little bit of the anomaly because I don't have kids. We don't have kids. And so, my business is my life, right? I mean, it's I mean, I don't know how to really explain it other than, you know, it's my passion, it's my hobby, it's my job, and all of that kind of wrapped into one. And I think because of that, right, like I was telling you, I'd never had anybody cancel on me before. And to a certain extent, I take it a little personal. Um, because we want to do a good job. We want to keep you as a customer forever. And I think when you've never lost one and you lose three, like one, two, three, it really takes a toll on. It took a toll on me personally, of the fact of like, okay, well, am I not taking care of my customers? Am I not doing the right things? Am I not, what is causing this?
I think that's actually a good question to ask, though. As you lose customers, if you're not tracking the reason why you lose customers, you're missing the boat. We had John Tanner from American Alarm on an earlier call, and they talked about kind of the ways that they have folks that manage retention, and when somebody does cancel, they're tracking why they cancel. I don't want to go too far off on this tangent because it's not really what we're talking about here, but I think that AJ, the taking it personally is what separates you from. I'll give you an example. We won an account from a competitor, and they were spending $40,000 a month with that competitor. And they switched to us, and they said, "Oh man, this is a big decision." They switched, and months into it, the owner called me and he said, "Jake, you know what? What's wild is nobody reached out to me. Like, nobody asked me what happened to $40,000 a month in business that we were doing with them that just disappeared." And for me, I was like, "Oh, that's too bad." But inside, I'm like, "Whew, that's good news, right?" But I think that's what separates you, AJ. As a founder-led business, you really get to take it personally, and you can use that to number one, to try to save those accounts, but number two, to really do an autopsy on each deal and figure out, hey, why did we lose this customer? Because as you grow your business, there may be some things that you can fix. If it's not the right product, we can change that. If it's not the right service level, we could change that. If somebody just wanted a lower rate, well, maybe we need to figure out some way to be able to discount rates on the fly if somebody's going to cancel because somebody offered them specifically that. I'm going to go off on a tangent, and we're not going to talk about retention. That's for a conversation for another call. What I do want to talk about, AJ, you talked about, not having kids. And that kind of changing the dynamics. I think that for everybody I know in business, they go through stages of a similar scenario, right? Before you have kids, while you're building your career before kids, right? And then after you have kids, after your kids are grown or of a certain age, you're kind of right back in that same scenario. And so I think even for those of us that, have kids and are trying to balance that out, you could relate to this idea. And I see this a lot of times when people's kids grow up and move out, then they like get to refocus on their business and kind of figure out how they're going to do things and pour themselves into it. If is there anybody on the call that has young kids and or has had young kids throughout their career and had to balance that, kind of balance the professional ambition with the personal responsibility to be a good parent? If anybody's willing to speak to navigating that balance, please just raise your hand for me. Chuck, tell us a little bit about balancing professional ambition and responsibilities at home.
Yeah, I think that's always the hardest thing. I think I was a little selfish in that realm. It allowed me to keep my wife wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So I actually had two businesses. One was working for doing security. The second was I was a freelance sound engineer. So I would do concerts by the weekend, or I had my own business where I provided sound for 4,000 seat venues and down to 200 seat venues. So learning that, when you have quality time, taking the time with the kids, I always made it a habit to participate in one of their activities. I had three boys, so it was always tricky to be the Kool-Aid house and yet bring in enough income, to be able to keep a spouse at home. Um, but now I'm empty nester, and now you see, gosh, I wish I would have been at work less and a little bit more at home. I didn't need as much money as I thought. We just needed to be on the same page as far as the budget goes.
I think that's a tough balance for a lot of folks that are the working spouse outside the home, particularly when whether sometimes, the balance with, because I think that there's very few families now, that can support a household on a single income. And so we see a lot of folks that, both spouses are working. And that's a challenge, right, in of itself, because it's, hey, what's more important, my job or your job? And if you think that question won't come up, it will come up, right? Kids are sick. Which one of you is staying home, right? And kids are sick repeatedly. Which one of you is staying home repeatedly? And kids are sick again. I can't believe this. One of us is going to get in trouble at work because we're missing so much time. I'm very thankful. I'm very thankful to have the safety net of knowing that I'm not going to get fired if I have to stay home with the kids. But I could tell you, I know that for a lot of folks, that's really a challenge. And Chuck, I will say, that I think for a lot of families, being able to support one spouse at home is a real blessing. And it is something that, is, I think a lot of people aspire to. And I also want to point out, I talked to a lot of people that are like, I wasn't as involved as I would have wanted to be, when my kids were young. But I'll tell you, right now, I dropped my daughter off at my parents' this morning, right? And she's gonna make food for Easter with my mom, right? And so, like, I just want to point out, I think that for anybody on the call, it's like, I don't know, like, if I could have spent more time, you can always spend more time afterwards. Like, I still love to hang out with my dad now, and I'm a grown man, So, I hope you get that time. I know that's a challenge. For me, I think balancing ambition and being a good dad and a good husband is probably one of the hardest things. Thanks so much for sharing that, Chuck. And Will, talk to us about how you balance things with young kiddos.
Well, it's still a balancing act, no pun intended. with that. So earlier in my career being in sales, I'd say I was 2.5 years into it when my first daughter was born. And I can vividly remember, being in the hospital, taking sales calls in the bathroom of the postpartum.
Because your wife was gonna murder you if you took them in the room, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing to that, Jake, is I think your spouse is extremely important in that work-life balance equation because having a very supportive wife, she understands that in order to support our family, I need to close deals. So she gives me that grace. If I had to step out on the front porch, maybe after hours and make a phone call, she gives me that grace. But also at the end of the day, there's nothing more important than my family. So I have to be very conscious that when I am home around my daughter, that she has my full attention and that I am not putting work over top of my time with her. So it's a balancing act, and I'm still learning. And I'm glad you brought this question up because I want to hear everybody else's feedback to figure out ways that I can tailor my schedule and my time to help my work life balance. So
Yeah, I think that there's number one, I think it's an important struggle to have. I think it's a worthwhile struggle because it's like, hey, if you don't struggle with it, um, and maybe you're just totally 100% there for your family at all times and neglect your job. Well, like that's not a good thing either, right? Like you need to have a job to support your family. And then the reverse is true. If you're way too committed to your job and you're not there for the family, what's the point, right? I somebody posted something recently about like if our success does not make the quality of life better for the people that we love, then what's the point? And I really think that's like a really good litmus test for it. Like, does this next level of success make the quality of life better for the people that we love? Man, that like really, really made me think. But I also say, Will, as you're figuring some of this stuff out and as you're constantly kind of adjusting, um, there your wife gives you grace, and I know, that your job, because you work for an awesome company with really great values, also gives you grace, right? Like, it's like, "Hey, and I think that's an um, I would say this, work for a company. If you're either work for a company, if you're gonna work for a company that has the right values, right? If you're working for a company, make sure you're working for a place that has the right values. Um, or if you're leading people, make sure that you have that, check your values because, people want to work for a company that gives them a little bit of grace too and some understanding. So did you want to add something, Will?
yeah, just to piggyback off that thought, it's funny. We have bottles of water that have silent guard labels on it, and I tell people, I'm like, be careful before you drink that because you or your wife may end up pregnant. Because we like within our organization, we have like 5 babies within a 6 month span. So at our
What's in the water, Will?
I don't know. I'm done drinking it though. Uh, but whenever you come into
To the
our office,
coffee.
yeah, there's a good chance someone has a baby or a toddler somewhere around our office, but, that starts at the top, If my wife needs to run an errand and she needs to drop my daughter off at the office, I know the door is wide open and my daughter will come in and make her rounds, and all the employees are very hands-on, so definitely, like you said, work for an organization where, they value family as well, so
Yeah, that's 100%. And it's something that I will say that I feel like I'm better about this now that I have kids, having the perspective of it because I didn't have it early in my career and early in leading people. And I have to admit, I was insensitive. Like I didn't understand, like I couldn't wrap my brain around missing so much work or needing flexibility. And now I'm like, dude, your kid's got a thing, go do that thing, like be there for that. And obviously, it can't be all the things all the time, but I'm really glad, Will. It's so nice to work with folks like Silent Card that have those values. And we've got Josh Roberson on. Josh, tell us a little bit about balancing, work and family?
You know what? I'm on this call and it got a lot of type A personalities, a lot of go-getters, inspirational. And I don't know. I think I have something to contribute here, but I don't I'm probably on the extreme side as someone that has been professionally traveling 30 years. It's a ridiculous amount. I mean, if you have a lifetime, help
What were you, 12 when you started traveling for work?
I know everyone says that. I started when I was like 20, 25, 24. I don't know. I'll be 50. So the years don't add up. I must have been 18. I don't know. But the point being though is that someone that has a lifetime diamond status, which is basically 3 years at a hotel, is not probably going to be an excellent example of work-life balance. But what I would say is that my secret, if you will, or my method of operation is that I try to always be in the present. I do prioritize my family. And certainly when I'm home, I'm trying to not be doing, other things. Technology has certainly helped that, FaceTime. And so I routinely will watch a soccer game. Again, I feel like I'm playing a little fiddle here. Watch a soccer game remotely, and that has really helped a lot. But obviously being in person and being able to give a loved one or give a high five to your daughter for scoring a goal is better than, hey, good job. I watched you today on FaceTime. So I think again the biggest thing and probably a lot of greatness from my wife is saying, hey, you're just hey. And that just means, oh, hey, you're screwing around, you're not paying attention, stay in the real time, enjoy the moment, that kind of thing. So anyways, that was my input.
No, I think that's awesome. And look, I think there is s- some folks have to travel for work, right? And it's like, honestly, I travel for work once or twice a month right now. And that means that sometimes I'm, t- oftentimes, I'm talking to my kids on FaceTime when that's happening. It means that when I'm out at ISC West for the week, that I'm up at 4:30 in the morning so that I could catch the kids in the car on the way to school at 7:30 East Coast time, right? Um, the uh, our job is we have to do our job, right? But like honestly, Josh, like the FaceTime, yeah, it would be cool to high five your kid, but being intentional enough to make the time to be there to FaceTime during a soccer game, I think that really is it's important. Thank God for technology now. It's amazing. I wish I could have FaceTime my dad back in the day, and like now it's like cool. Like I can FaceTime my kids, and that's just so much fun. So
Even the Ring doorbell, they're walking out, heading to
yeah,
school. I'm like, "Hey, have a great day," something simple like that. So, I think it's just the intention, making the best of the situation. Jake, as we were both at ISC, and you're absolutely correct. It's just prioritizing making time, and, like, if I have a call with my child, is that really detrimental? No, it's not detrimental to, someone else could have graciously taken a phone call 2 minutes later. It really doesn't. So anyways, I appreciate the discussion and the collaborative passion on this, but this is one that's near and dear to my heart and gets me a little vulnerable, I suppose. So it's been interesting hearing your guys' comments. So thank you.
well, thanks so much for sharing. And guys, I want to say this, that there is no perfect work life balance. There is no perfect, I know, God, if I see one more thing on social media about the perfect morning routine that's going to turn you into a multi-billionaire by noon today, I'm gonna lose my mind. Um, I think that, Will talks about his wife giving him some grace. I think that if all of us are willing to give ourselves a little grace, it would go a long way. Because we're all trying to find that balance. I really like some of the tips about not just morning routine, but kind of getting our head right throughout the day. Jason, thanks so much for sharing that perspective. Because sometimes we're not going to have the right routine. We're not going to start the day right. Things are going to happen, and just being able to kind of get our thoughts collected, slow down, kind of reprioritize. I think that's so helpful and really helps with managing the stress. Guys, I'm sorry. There's a couple folks with their hands raised. You won't be able to get to those because I try to keep this call to an hour. I want to thank everybody for jumping on Coffee Break with Jake today. We have this call every Friday at 11 a.m. If there's ever anything that you're struggling with in your business or some opportunity that you want to kind of unpack with the team here on a call, feel free to email it over to me. I'm always looking for great discussion topics. If you do business with us today, thank you so much. We're honored for the opportunity to support you, to support your business. I'm personally feel very privileged to print the logos of many fine companies on the products that they install. If you don't do business with us today, please, I invite you to reach out to me. But if you don't, either way, whether you do business with us or not, you're always welcome on this call. We are glad to have you here, whether you chime in with questions or comments or whether you just listen in. It's always great to have you. I wish all of you a very happy Easter, a very happy Passover, and I'll look forward to catching up with all of you next week at 11 a.m. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend.